We are back with Melanie today, who's followed us with 3 sessions from Chapters Interiors. Melanie, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be back.
So we sent you some questions because we've been receiving a lot of queries on our social platforms and through our website for a lot of styles, interior design styles, decor styles. And I think it's also based with a lot of people spending extra time at home, looking to change up, looking to create new areas within their homes. Okay. I'm happy that you'll be able to help us today.
Oh, with pleasure.
Okay, so based on what feedback we've received from everyone, we have 4 looks that seem to be quite common and quite popular. So we'll be looking at the classic, the natural, the modern, and the urban styles. And we've got a couple of questions under each topic or style, if you can say. So the first one that we'll be focusing on is classic. And one of the first questions we got was, what would you say are the key differences between French style and Italian style?
So to start off, Nicole, so style is a spectrum. And style generally is influenced by a lot of different things. So it will be influenced by geographic location. It'll be influenced by time in history. It'll be influenced by personal taste. There's a lot of things that influence the way styles are achieved. And you will very, very seldom find one space that is dedicated specifically to a style, unless it's a themed environment. So, for example, a French restaurant. Then they will have invested in that style quite heavily. Often, when styles come from a very similar geographic location, like French and Italian, they come from very similar parts of the world. There'll be a lot of overlap between the two. And as a result of that, there'll be quite an easy way to bring the 2 styles together in the same space. So I want to encourage everybody not to get too stuck on the 5 key elements of the style are this. Understand the overall arching style and then try and bring your own personal elements into it. So French style, it's very elegant, it's very sophisticated, it's refined. And interesting, one of the key identifiers in French is it's very ornate. It's got a lot of curves in it, particularly in its furniture feet. So, for example, your ball and claw bath comes across as very French because it's got that very curved leg in it. Your French will have soft and subtle shades in tiles or in wall colors like beige, white, and they're quite sort of warm, glowing colors. Your furniture will have more of an antique feel to it, and pieces like couch and chairs will have that dark, glossy type of wood that we're used to in much older homes, and it'll have that engraved, curved line to it that I've just mentioned. French has a lot of that distressed cabinetry that we've seen coming in and out of fashion quite a lot, particularly in spaces like kitchens. Also, French will have quite a lot of pattern in it, so things like toiles or damask patterns you'll see in a lot of French spaces. And both of those have quite a lot of curves on them. Italian, interestingly enough, is, although it comes from a similar geographic location, it's quite broad. So it can move all the way from rustic, so your terracotta type floors, all the way to very modern and glamorous, all the way up to your marble, for example. And one of the most important elements in Italian style is preserving history of the culture, particularly when it comes to style. So you'll find that people who know and understand and invest in Italian style know their products very well, and they'll understand the style very well. And they'll be very specific about what they want because they're trying to preserve that historic style. It's Italian, you've got sort of very natural colors like whites and beiges, couple of splashes, maybe a Mediterranean color like rich reds or terracotta, or some brilliant blues will come in, which you're not finding in French. Italian has a lot of open, so Italian living is very much about the way that you live. So, for example, you have a lot of open spaces, like open plan kitchens. It's very much the Italian way to rest and socialize and not just work to make the food. Stone is very vital in Italian environments. Like I said, all the way from your natural stone floors, your terracotta, your large-scale marble or marble lookalike that you guys stock, all the way to marble countertops. And whereas Italian has a lot of ornate wrought iron, French will have a lot more sort of silver details to it and done in a lot more curvy kind of shapes. So although they come from different countries per se, they come from a very similar geographic region, and they will be able to work quite well together.
It seems so, even though they fall under the header of classic, they're very different looks.
If they're trying to go for the classic look here, and they're debating between Italian or French, or they've got French influences or Italian influences, there's two products that I would recommend they go for. And I'm a firm believer that these are going to be good investments going forward. I would either go wood look or stone look tiles, or even a combination of both. You could do some great patterning with those tiles. And the reason I recommend that is because wood look tiles are universal. They'll work with almost every style that you can possibly imagine. Stone has a very much organic look to it, and I can glam it up to be a little bit more French, and it definitely works in Italian. And those two products work really well together because they have a similar type of composition. They both come from natural looking products.
Okay.
They work very well together and for both of those styles.
I think you've just answered our next question there ahead of time. Thank you. Yes. So we want to invest in a good quality tile that will live for the foreseeable future. So we need to be guided in timeless looks that won't go out of fashion when we sell in the future. So is that again what you refer to your wood and your stone look tiles?
Stone. So from an investment point of view, you can dress up or dress down stone and wood. They're not necessarily rustic always in nature. It's the color that you choose and the finish that you choose. But also, I think it's quite important or relevant at the moment about what's going on in the world with COVID-19 is a lot of people are spending a lot more time in their own spaces. People are suddenly becoming aware of how consumerist our societies have been. And they're starting to almost revert back to simple stuff like more family time, less driving, less fancy cars because it's better for the planet. And I think you're going to find, we know that wood look tiles are a universal, really good seller because it reconnects us to the outside world. I'll be very interested to see what happens with stone and wood over the next year to 2 years, because I think people are going to be even more attracted to it because of what's going on in the world at the moment.
Now, do you think it's an emotional attraction as well? If you look within our stores, we have two Manhattans. One is very filled with greenery, very beachy vibe, very natural looks. And another one, which I love and range, which is high end, is very gloss, rich reds, greys, etc. But emotionally, you tend to gravitate towards our cotto stand because of the greenery and the nature. Automatically, you will turn left instead of right. Even though the Laufen aesthetically looks amazing and it really is high end, but you as a person automatically will go to the left.
So I think, as I said, people are reverting back to the basics, and they will be more attracted to things that connect them to nature and the planet and Earth. And I also think, I think it's a psychological and a physiological need that we have at the moment, facing the current COVID-19 threat that we've got. But also, one of the global issues that's going to come out of COVID-19 is PTSD for all the frontline workers, for children, for families, for people who have lost loved ones. They're talking a lot about depression and anxiety and PTSD being huge issues coming out of this. And people are going to look for more and more ways to relax and de-stress. And going for something more natural, your more relaxing colors, your greens and your blues, your more natural looking products, your woods and your stones, I think there's going to be an uptick in those as time goes on, because it's a natural balm to what's going on in the rest of our world at the moment.
Correct. And we actually have a question for our natural style. So it is, we live in a flat with no garden and we love plants in our house, but we tend to kill every plant. What's your take on artificial greenery?
They're not alone. I think everybody I have one plant that I murder and then bring back to life. And I think I'm a genius, and then I murder it again, then I bring it back to life. So I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with fake plants. If you don't have the green thumb and you want that sort of greenery in your space, absolutely go that route. I have a couple of recommendations. So a really cheap fake plant looks really fake. So I would invest in the best quality fake plant that you can afford and use those, because they are less likely to look that obvious. And then there's a couple of other ways to use them and to dress them so that they're not as obvious, and they bring you much more joy than the stress of murdering your plant a couple of times. A great trick is to often fake plants will come with no pot, or they'll come with a plastic pot. Take the fake plant out of the plastic pot. Use a pot that you would use for a normal living pot, be it a terracotta or a ceramic or a stone, and use real soil in it. You don't have to water it, but use real soil and a real pot, because it'll lend itself to the real illusion of that plant. Because they're not being watered, fake plants tend to get quite dusty, and the cheaper ones, the dust tends to stick to them quite a lot. So dust them regularly. Also, use your fake plants in a variety of containers. So glass, like I saw an amazing image on one of our suppliers' Facebook page today, which was a beautiful clear vase, and it had the most amazing stems of fake eucalyptus in it. That's a fake plant, and it looked beautiful. So use a variety of containers. And then a really neat trick is to mix fake and real plants together. If you're doing a pot plant of something like azaleas, make two of them, the fake ones, and make one real. It'll just lend itself a little bit to the illusion. And I think you're perfect. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with fake plants. Go for it.
Thank you for that. Okay, so our next style that we're looking at is the modern style. And we've got here, what's the difference between modern style and contemporary style?
This is a question we get so often, and it's a question that I answer with such delight, because so many people get this wrong. And you will find it in your showrooms as well. As a client will come in and say they're looking for something modern, and what they're actually looking for is something contemporary. So contemporary, they often interchange with each other, but there's a couple of differences. So modern is a very strict interpretation of design that started in the 20th century. It's very much the latest in design. Whereas contemporary is a range of styles that have been popular over a period of time. And that period of time is generally defined as 50 years. So there's less strict adherence to a very specific style. And in a way, it's almost eclectic, because it borrows from certain time periods, things that are popular. So for example, a really good example is something like terracotta. Terracotta in the 80s was extremely popular as a tile, and it's been out of fashion for a long time. Terracotta is now back in very many forms, in clothing, paint colors, terrazzo, tiles. It's come back. So terracotta could be considered contemporary because it's popular now, and it's been popular in the last 50 years. So contemporary is very much about clean, straight lines, smooth surfaces, light-colored woods, frosted or clear glass, stainless steel. Your more cool metals, your stainless steel, your nickels, and your chromes. Your furniture has a sharp angles, 90-degree angles on it. Very simple fabrics are used. Things like wool, cotton, and linen are used in contemporary styles. You will get some patterns. It'll be either in a backsplash, in a bathroom or a kitchen. It might be in a throw, something like that. Modern, on the other hand, actually overlaps quite a lot with minimalist interiors. And the reason there's that overlap is the focus is very much on simplicity, cleanliness, and an absence of stuff decor or detailing. So remember in the beginning we spoke about how easily Italian and French would work with each other if you found the right way to do it, because they come from the same geographic location. Something like modern and French would not work. So if you put a lot of curves and carved details into modern, it's just too different from it. It's too detailed for it. The modern furniture is very smooth, clean lines. And interestingly, a lot of their furniture takes cues from the 1930s. So you'll see those furniture styles popping up in there. Your color palettes in modern is very neutral. Whites, creams, beige. And even your beige then errs more on the lighter side than your darker side. And interestingly, in modern, you wouldn't think so, but a lot of plastics like acrylic, for example, and plywood are used in a lot of modern furnishings. So people often get modern and contemporary confused with each other. And it's just because the words are so closely linked to each other. Most people and most environments that you see currently are a form of eclectic contemporary, because we've all been around for the period of time where there's things that we like and things that are popular. So we're more attracted to those.
Would you find if you had hand-me-downs, and I know everyone does have a hand-me-down, chest of drawers, dressing table, whatever the likes from your grandparents, would that then see a second phase of fame, if I can say, if you're fitting it into a contemporary interior design area? Or is that just considered, no, it's secondhand and it actually has no place?
No. So I think that's such a good question. And it depends on the era that it comes from. So, for example, something like Baroque or Rococo type styles, which is very heavy, very dark, errs on the side of Gothic a little bit, that would be pushing it a bit because there's nothing like it at the moment. And I think that period of time was too long ago. And you don't see a lot of that sort of thing. However, if it's your granny's armoire and you inherit it and you paint it matte black paint and you give it beautiful black beading detail on its glass and you give it, let's say, brass handles, you've shifted that piece of furniture almost from a Victorian era into a urban, slightly contemporary industrial. So I definitely think there's a link to be able to pull that into contemporary. Absolutely.
Okay, our next question is, my boyfriend and I are moving in together. His flat is very modern and my furniture is quite boho. Can we combine our colors and textures with his edginess?
I love this question. So your home is your home and your home is your sanctuary. And that means that space needs to reflect both of your styles and both of your tastes. So there is a way to combine it, and it's about compromise. Consider how you want each space to feel when you're in those spaces, and try and find a common ground in where you want, how you want the space to feel in it, and how you're going to be using that space. And then try and bring in an element of each other's style into that space. So, and it's simple solutions with maybe a little bit of creative thinking. So you might have a mid-century couch, but paint the wall a fun color. He might have a game theme piece of wall art, and that could be hung up above your traditional Chesterfield couch. So it's just about finding ways to bring both elements together, and it's very doable. And I'm a firm believer that home should be your sanctuary and should reflect everybody's space.
So our next style we're looking at is urban. We found a small inner city apartment with big windows up to the top floor. Curtains or not?
So good question. It very much depends on a couple of things. So how much privacy do they need in that space? They say that it's on the top floor, but is anybody else overlooking it from another apartment block? Does an office block look into the apartment? So how much privacy do they actually need? If they don't need any, then don't put up any curtains and enjoy the what would be an amazing view and the natural light coming in. How much light do you need to block? And this would depend room by room. So, for example, let's assume in this situation, privacy is not an issue, but I might need some curtains in the bedroom because I don't want to be woken up with the rising sun in the morning. So in which case I might need to put some blackout curtains in there. A media room where I'm watching TV or computer work gets done or games get played, that would need some form of window or light blocking on it to help with the glare. So there's different ways to look at it. The other thing they need to consider is space. So depending on how big that apartment is, traditional curtains can take up quite a lot of floor space and stack space. Do they have the space for that? So they need to look at all of those sorts of things. There are some other options if privacy is not an issue or space is not an issue, or you can do something like shears, which is a beautiful, soft, almost see-through type, very light curtain. And if it's a inner city apartment, I'm going to assume that it's got a little bit of an urban industrial feel to it. And you do those in a beautiful charcoal gray, would work perfectly in there. Like discrete roller blinds, which are fitted onto a track in the recess, and they get rolled up, and you can barely see them when they're rolled up. But when you need to sleep or prevent light coming into a TV room, for example, you can put those down. So there's a lot more options other than curtains, and also curtains are great. They are a more expensive investment than a lot of people expect, even already store-bought ones. But there's other ways to do it as well. So very much privacy, glare, what do they use that space for? We'll answer their questions for them.
Okay, so what's the difference between industrial style and urban style?
Urban is sometimes referred to as soft industrial. It's more consumer-focused industrial. It's got a similar sleekness to your loft-like apartments, but it's got that more rustic flair, like a raw brick wall or raw wood furniture thrown into it, which is something we understand as industrial. You've got a lot of exposed brick and stone. Your industrial pendant lighting comes in here. Also, you'll have wrought iron, which interestingly enough comes from Italian. Isn't that interesting? The two overlap each other. Lighting in an urban or soft industrial environment is very important because you need to offset those very dark or deep colors and corners that are created by industrial spaces and furniture and those very hard surfaces. Your furniture in these kinds of spaces as well will be a mixture of old and weathered and glossy woods, which will create a balance between sort of old and new. Typical industrial is very cool and modern. It's got very little warmth to it. So it blends new and repurposed items for that combination of modern and vintage. So vintage in its own is a style as well. So you'll see as we're talking through this how styles overlap each other and they influence each other, and why it is so rare to find one style unless it's in a themed environment that is true to its style in one space. Typical industrial has very large open spaces, high spacious loft ceilings. Colors are very muted and cool. This is where your grays and your blacks and whites will come in. Whereas in urban, your colors, it might be the place that you bring in a blue or a yellow or red scatter cushions, for example. In true industrial, metal is the most used design element. Light fixtures, countertops, stairwells, taps, backsplashes, countertops. And industrial chic has become a very popular choice of style with many urban loft spaces because it speaks to the building. But urban or soft industrial is probably more consumer focused, and it balances out the hard with the warm. Whereas industrial is a very cool industrial type of space.
So I know that you're also offering some of our followers a discount. So would you like to give some details how people can get hold of you, what the offering is, and any contact details that they may need?
Okay, so thank you, Nicole. One of the things we do at Chapters is we offer a lot of training as an accredited training organization. And recently we've taken all of our training online. So people can get hold of us at www.chaptersinteriors.com or alternatively at info@chaptersinteriors.com. And as part of our relationship with Italtile, we're offering all Italtile fans on social media a 20% discount on all of our courses. All they need to do is get a hold of us on that email address that I gave, or get hold of Italtile on any of their social media, and the lovely Nicole will put them in touch with us. And they need to quote the code Italtile_0147. That'll give them access to that 20% discount off all of our online courses.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I know that we've got some quite good feedback already from our past few sessions with you. But until then, thank you so much again for the input and the sharing. We get value out of it, our staff get value out of it, and our followers also get value out of it. So we'll see you again, and thank you so much.
Great. Such a pleasure. Thank you, Nicole.